As compared to Northern Europe, Italy in the early Renaissance period was much quicker to embrace new styles. And some of those new styles we mentioned last week. They're influences of humanism and classical models, which were used to bring back a more naturalistic style of art, which is often associated with the Renaissance. One example of this embrace of classical models is the work of Donatello. So this image shows us David from the story of David and Goliath. And we see David in his moment of victory. He's standing victorious, holding Goliath's sword, and we can see the head of Goliath here at the base as well. But what's really notable about this piece is that David is nude, one stylistic aspect that comes directly from classical models, and he's standing in a stance known as contrapposto. Contrapposto is a naturalistic standing position that reflects the movement and the weight is actually distributed in the body as we stand. So we see him with one straight or locked knee, one relaxed knee, and we can see a tilt of the hips and the pelvis here as well to reflect that movement in the body. One of the things that sets this piece apart, though, from just being a copy of a classical statue is David's face. So even though he's won this battle, he's won this great victory, he doesn't look ecstatic, he doesn't look overly victorious. Instead, he looks a little bit pensive or introspective. And what Donatello is trying to do here is a very humanist type of thing. He's trying to provide a psychological portrait of what David might have been thinking in this moment. After all, he's a young boy in his early teens who's just been through a terrifying situation and killed a man. So we see that artists are embracing, along with traditional ideas that are coming back into fashion, these new ideas. If we look at our next piece, Masaccio's The Tribute Money, this also shows an embrace of these new ideas. So Masaccio is very interested in some of these new innovations and these new ideas. One very obvious thing we see here is the use of linear perspective. So linear perspective means that objects come to a vanishing point on the horizon line in our painting or our image. And what we see here is if we trace those lines of the building, their vanishing point is right about here, near or just over the head of Christ. And Masaccio uses this because he realizes that this will help direct the reader's attention back to that central figure of Jesus. We also see here Masaccio is interested in atmospheric perspective. Atmospheric perspective is replicating the effects of light and atmosphere in a work of art. And many of the effects of atmospheric perspective seem very obvious to us because we experience them in our everyday life. So as objects get further away from us, they get smaller. They get blurrier. And there's less contrast between dark and light. So all of those things are pretty obvious. Most of us will have experienced them or thought about them before. We also see, though, as objects get further away from us, they look more blue or gray because there's more atmosphere between us and them. So if we look at Masaccio's mountains, we can see this first set of mountains is highly detailed. We see houses on the mountains, we see a variety of tones of colors, we can see areas that are meadows and areas that have trees. If we look at this middle set of mountains, we see some dark areas and some light areas, but not nearly as much detail as in that foremost set of mountains. And as we move back, the mountains get not only blurrier and less distinction between dark areas and light areas, but these backmost set of mountains are much, much more blue or gray in tone than these mountains that are in the foreground. And these ideas, these of classical models, the use of humanistic impulses, linear perspective, and atmospheric perspective are four of the attributes that are really defining the Renaissance in Italy in the 15th century.